profound spiritual experience that really did change my life, I would say radically and forever. And the funny thing about it was I was traveling. I was in the Western Sierras of California, and I was planning on going into the wilderness on a kind of a retreat. I was going to take just the bare essentials, just barely enough to even feed myself. And I was going to go like the ancient Aboriginal culture of Australia on walkabout, like the ancient Native American cultures on this grand vision quest. And what was funny about it was I'd spent so much time preparing, and I was reading, and I was meditating, and I was trying to prepare my body and my mind and all these different things. And I was starting to get nervous because here I was way out in the middle of nowhere, and pretty much no one knew where I was. And I don't recommend this for people necessarily, but this is what I was doing. And so the night before I was to set off on my epic quest, it was a beautiful full moon. So I remember I gathered up, I had this sort of a camp blanket, and I found this beautiful big bare rock that was a little bit higher than the landscape around it, just kind of nestled in the tall trees. And I set out my blanket, and there I just sat for a moment just to pray about what I was going to do, with the hopes that I would be guided, the hopes that I would have some great spiritual experience. And as I was sitting there praying, looking up at that beautiful, pure white moon in the sky, the moon started to shimmer a bit. And then the trees, the dark silhouettes of the trees around me started to fade. And I shook my head and I thought, that's weird. And then I returned to my prayers. And I was looking at that beautiful white moon, and it started to shimmer a little, and the trees started to fade. And then it continued to fade, as if the sky itself were expanding and expanding. And then I stopped again, and I thought, that's weird. And then I started again, and it happened again. And this time I thought, hey, pay attention. And the night sky continued to expand until all the trees dissolved. It was almost like a great sea above me, flooding everything around me. And pretty soon the trees were gone. Pretty soon the very earth around me was gone. And all that I could experience was just myself and this infinite night sky and this beautiful moon. And there was just this kind of awe and this beauty and this extraordinary peace. And then the stars started to disappear, one at a time, until all of a sudden the moon itself, as if slipping below the surface, vanished. And there was nothing. And in that moment, which I honestly couldn't tell you if it lasted 5 minutes or 5 hours, there was nothing. And yet it was complete and it was whole. And I was completely absorbed in it, and in some ways completely unaware of it, until all of a sudden, flickering back into my awareness, was that moon, perhaps a little further in the sky. And then the stars, one by one, came out, and then the sounds of the creatures, and the trees as if rising up around me. And the next thing I realized was that I had a body. And I felt my breath and my tongue move across my teeth. And all of a sudden, as if only after, I realized this moment. And in that moment, it was as if there was only one thing in this universe. You might call it an energy. The heart of every cell in my body, the heart of every molecule in that mountain, and in those trees, in the star, in the moon. And in that moment, that was all I could see, was that one energy that was everything. But for me, it was so much more than energy, because it conveyed an experience of love and peace and a kind of wisdom that seemed to ripple throughout my awareness for days afterwards. And I call that an experience of God. And it was in that moment that I knew, not just as an idea, but in my heart, that only God is real. And you can call it whatever you like. But ultimately, if we are willing, if we are open, we can return to that source. We can return to that oneness that we all come from. And then we feel the responsibility to live it and to share it and to call it forth in each and every person we meet. And all of a sudden, violence and opposition isn't just a bad idea. It feels contradictory to our nature. We feel the impulse to love and to serve and connect.